Imagine you are walking through a big, busy city like London. You see tall buildings, fancy cars, and big stone palaces with guards wearing tall, fuzzy hats. Now imagine that inside one of those palaces there was a secret that stayed hidden for a very long time. It was a secret written on a piece of paper with a pen. For many years, nobody knew this paper existed. It was a letter from a mommy to her little boy. But this was not just any mommy. She was the most famous woman in the whole wide world. People called her the people's princess. Her name was Diana. For a long time, some people told lies and used fake papers to trick her into talking. They made her feel scared and worried about her family. But even when she was sad or scared, she was always a mother first. She loved her two boys, William and Harry, more than all the gold in the world. Now, a very special letter she wrote to her oldest son, William, has been found. People were shocked when they read what was inside. It tells us things about Diana that we never knew before. It shows us how she really felt when the cameras weren't watching. Today, we are going to look at this lost letter and see the secrets it tells us about a mother's love that never goes away. The story of these secret letters did not start with a big bang. It started very quietly in the year 2004. In a big city called London, there is a place called an auction house. This is a place where people sell old and special things to the person who has the most money. In July of that year, a book was sent out to tell people what was for sale. Most people didn't even notice it. There were no loud noises on the news and no big signs in the streets. But tucked away in the list were some handwritten letters from Princess Diana. These were not letters about boring royal business or fancy parties. These were letters from Diana's heart. They were very private and showed what her life was like when she was all alone or just being a mom. In this big pile of papers, one letter stood out more than all the rest. This letter talked about her oldest son, Prince William. When people read it, they could see exactly how much she loved him. The auction was put together by a group called SS. The letters were sent to them by a lady named Violet Collisson. Violet was not a princess or a queen. She was a lady who worked as a housekeeper for Diana's family for a very long time. Violet had known Diana since she was a shy little girl. She watched Diana grow up, get married, and become the most famous person on the planet. Because they were so close, Diana trusted Violet with her deepest thoughts. The letters showed the whole story of Diana's life. Official palace papers are usually very stiff and perfect, like they were written by a robot. But Diana's letters to Violet were different. They were messy, real, and full of feelings. They showed the happy times and the very sad times. They showed how hard it was to be a princess when everyone expected you to be perfect. Most of all, they showed that being a mommy was the most important thing in the world to her. One very sweet letter was written on July 8, 1981. This was just a few weeks before Diana was going to marry Prince Charles in a giant wedding that the whole world would watch on TV. You would think she would be very stressed out. In the letter, Diana described the palace as a very busy place. She said everyone was running around like crazy trying to fix things at the last minute. But even with all that noise, Diana was acting very cool. She wrote that the bride was staying calm while everyone else was worried. This little note showed that she was a fun person who could find a way to smile even when things were chaotic. It showed why so many people loved her. She felt like a real person, not just a picture on a stamp. But as the years went on, the letters started to sound a bit more serious. The young princess who was excited about her wedding grew into a woman who had many big worries. She felt frustrated and she felt concerned. But even when she was having a hard time, her love for her two sons, William and Harry, never changed. It was like a rock that stayed still in a storm. What made these letters so special was not just the ink on the paper. It was the feeling behind the words. They showed a mother who was always thinking about if her kids were happy. She wanted them to be safe and she wanted them to have a good future. We have seen many pictures of Diana and watched many movies about her, but these letters were different. They were never supposed to be seen by the public. They were quiet and they were private. They were proof that she wanted her boys to grow up to be kind people who cared about others. This was a hard thing to do when you lived in a giant palace, where everyone had to follow very old and strict rules. There was another very special letter written on June 21, 1989. It was written on fancy paper from Kensington Palace. Diana wrote it to a man named Sergeant George Plum. He was part of a group that helped keep the royals safe. He had helped organize a very cool show with motorbikes for Prince William's 7th birthday. Diana was so happy and thankful. She wrote that it was very nice of him to come and that the show made all the kids and their mommies very happy. But the coolest part of this letter was the bottom. Next to Diana's name, there were some small, messy scribbles. Those scribbles were from William and Harry. They wanted to sign the letter, too. This gives us a tiny look at a very happy family moment. It was a time when they were just a mom and her boys having fun, far away from all the people taking pictures and writing stories in the newspapers. For people who loved Diana, these letters were more than just old pieces of paper. They made everyone start talking again about how Diana did not always get along with the royal family. She was very determined to raise her sons in a new way. For a long time, royal kids were raised in a very stiff and cold way. They didn't see their parents very much, and they had to follow many boring rules. But Diana broke those rules. She wanted William and Harry to have a real childhood. She wanted them to do things that regular kids do. Her bodyguard, a man named Ken Worf, said that Diana worked very hard to show them the world outside the palace walls. She took them to places with big roller coasters and let them eat burgers and fries at fast food restaurants. She even took them on big red buses that everyone else used. She didn't do this to be famous. She did it because she wanted them to understand what life was like for everyone else, not just for kings and queens. Princess Diana was much more than just a famous lady in pretty dresses. She was a mother who cared deeply about her children. She believed that even though they were princes, they should know how the rest of the world lived. She didn't want them to grow up in a bubble where they only knew rich and powerful people, so she took them to meet all kinds of different people. At the same time, she was like a mama lion protecting her cubs. She knew the media was always watching them and trying to take pictures. She would make deals with the palace to let the photographers take some official pictures, like on the first day of school. But in return, she told the media they had to leave her boys alone for the rest of the time. It was like a game of balance. She gave the world a little bit so that she could keep her boys safe and give them a normal life. A man named Andrew Morton wrote a famous book called Diana, Her True Story. In that book, he explained how much Diana hated it when people invaded her privacy. She had lived under bright lights and cameras for a long time, and she knew it could be very hard on a person's feelings, especially a child. Her letters about William were not just quick notes. They were like little windows into her heart. They were a record of how she was trying to get him ready for his big job in the future while also trying to keep him safe from the mean parts of the world. By the time these letters were sold in 2004, William was not a little boy anymore. He was a young man going to a big university. He was using the lessons his mother had taught him every single day. The letters showed everyone how much Diana's love had made William into the man he was. The world was still very sad that she had died 7 years before, and seeing these letters made people feel like she was still with them. The royal family was still changing because of the things Diana had done. People looked at William and saw that he acted a lot like his mother. But these letters were not just old things from history. They were a sad reminder of what the world lost when Diana died. She never got to see her boys grow up to be men. She never got to see them get married or have their own babies. She never got to see them help people in the ways she would have loved. But through these letters, her voice was still loud and clear. She wasn't giving a big practice speech. She was just talking with warmth and being honest. The auction turned into something much bigger than just selling papers. It allowed people to feel Diana's presence one more time. It showed the world her deep and powerful love for William. Diana's life as a mom was not just about what she wrote or the pictures people took. It was about the choices she made every single day. Some of those choices were very big and brave. Some were small ways of saying no to the old royal ways. But at the center of it all was one simple truth. Before William and Harry were famous princes, they were just two little boys with an amazing mommy. Diana knew that having a lot of money and a big title came with a lot of pressure. From the very start, she wanted to give them more than just a crown. She wanted to give them a good heart. Did she succeed? Did her boys grow up to be kind and care about the world? Let's look closer at how she raised them. On June 21, 1982, Diana became a mother for the first time. She gave birth to Prince William. She was only 20 years old. Becoming a mom changed her life right away. It was not just a job she had to do. It was a mission she loved with all her heart. Most royal moms from a long time ago followed very strict traditions. They didn't spend a lot of time with their babies, but Diana chose to be different. She didn't want to be a mommy who lived in a different part of the palace and only saw her kids for a few minutes a day. She wanted to be there for everything. She broke the rules by feeding William herself, which was something royal moms almost never did back then. She even picked his name herself instead of letting the palace leaders choose it for her. She also told everyone that she didn't want nannies doing all the work. She wanted to be a hands-on mother who changed diapers and played on the floor. Her love was very easy to see just a few weeks after William was born. Prince Charles had to go on a long trip to a country called Australia. Usually, royal babies were left at home with the workers. But Diana said, "No way. She refused to leave her tiny baby behind. She brought William with her on the big plane. This told the whole world that being a mommy was more important to her than any royal rules or jobs. As William grew up, Diana kept doing things her own way. Instead of having teachers come to the palace to teach him in a private room, she sent him to a local school nearby. People were shocked to see a real princess driving her son to school and picking him up at the end of the day. This had almost never happened in royal history. It was a quiet way of changing the rules of how a prince should be raised. Diana's work to give her kids a normal life didn't stop at school. She made sure William and Harry saw the world outside the palace walls. Their lives were not just about big, fancy dinners and wearing suits. They had many normal moments that any kid would love. She took them to eat fast food because she wanted them to know what it was like for regular kids. She took them on the subway train in London and to parks with big rides. She made sure they were around people who didn't bow to them or use fancy titles. These were not just fun trips, they were lessons. Diana wanted her boys to see life from many different sides. She wanted them to understand what it was like to not live in a palace. Her guard, Ken Worf, said she planned these trips very carefully so they wouldn't be followed by too many people. Sometimes she even wore a wig or different clothes so people wouldn't recognize her. She was giving them a real childhood and teaching them to care about others. She wanted her boys to have a good heart. She showed them this by taking them to her charity work. One time, she took William to a place called Centerpoint. This was a place that helped young people who had no homes and had to sleep on the street. William met kids who didn't have families or a warm bed to sleep in. Diana didn't do this to be mean. She did it because she wanted William to understand that he was very lucky. She wanted him to know that since he was a prince, he had a responsibility to help people who were struggling. By doing things differently and loving her kids so much, Diana didn't just change how royal parents acted. She made up a whole new way of being a royal mommy. How close were Diana and her boys? Let's find out about the strong bond between Diana, William, and Harry. By the start of the 1990s, Diana's marriage to Prince Charles was having many problems. The whole world was watching as they stopped being happy together. But even with all the sadness and the people writing mean things in the papers, Diana found her strength in her sons. She worked even harder to be a good mom and keep them away from the fighting. She chose schools for them that were kind and made them feel safe. She didn't just send them away. She talked to the teachers all the time to make sure William and Harry were doing okay. When Charles and Diana officially lived in different houses in 1992, it was hard to be a parent when everyone was watching. But Diana stayed very involved. She went to their school plays and cheered for them at sports games. She even wrote thank you notes to the people who worked at the schools. These little notes showed that she never let her royal job become more important than being a parent. In 1995, Diana did a big interview on TV with a man named Martin Bashir. More than 22 million people watched it. The world saw that the royal family was not as perfect as it looked. But even in that interview, Diana's main goal was clear, her boys. She talked about wanting to raise them with love and kindness. She wanted them to be strong on the inside, not just follow old rules. It was a very powerful moment. A princess was saying that being a good human was more important than being a perfect royal. Soon after that, the Queen told Diana she should get a divorce. This meant the marriage was officially over. Diana's helper, Paul Burrell, said she was very sad. She felt like she was being kicked out of the family and that nobody was listening to her. But even when things were very dark, her sons were there for her. William and Harry were like her anchors in a big, scary storm. After the divorce was finished in 1996, Diana lost her special title of Her Royal Highness. This was a formal thing, but it hurt her feelings a lot. It wasn't about politics, it was personal. Because she lost the title, the rules said she would one day have to bow or curtsy to her own sons because they were still higher-ranking royals. When she told William about this, the 14-year-old boy said something very sweet. He told her, "Don't worry, Mommy. I will give it back to you one day when I am the king." Even though William hasn't told this story himself, it shows how much they loved and respected each other. With her royal jobs finished, Diana spent her time on things she really cared about. She helped people who had no homes, people with a sickness called HIV, and she worked to stop dangerous bombs called landmines. She wasn't just representing the Queen anymore, she was representing herself. Even when she wasn't in the news as much, she kept writing letters to her friends and the people who helped her. And in almost every letter, she talked about her boys. She wrote about how kind William was and how Harry had so much energy. She wrote about her hopes for their future. She worried about the pressure they would feel growing up, and she hoped they would be honest and independent. Diana knew she couldn't control everything, but she could help shape her sons' hearts. Through her love and her words, she gave them things that the palace could never give them. She gave them courage and the strength to be their own men. Being a mom wasn't about royal duty for her. It was about showing up, listening, and loving them no matter what. She was the one who tucked them in at night and told them the truth even when it was hard to say. In 1992, it was announced that Diana and Charles were going to live apart. This was a huge change in Diana's life. Everything inside her home at Kensington Palace felt different. Even though she didn't live with Charles anymore, her job as a mom was still the most important thing to her. She worked even harder to make sure William and Harry felt loved and supported. At that time, William was only 10 and Harry was only 8. They really needed things to be stable. Diana took charge of their lives. She made sure she knew what they were doing at school and what they were doing on the weekends. As the world watched her marriage fall apart, Diana started to tell her own story. In 1994, Charles admitted on TV that he had been with someone else. A year later, Diana told her side in a very famous interview on the BBC. She talked about how hard royal life was and how lonely she felt. She also talked about her mental health. But what people remembered most was how she talked about her kids. She said she wanted William and Harry to grow up to be smart about feelings, not just smart about royal rules. She wanted them to really understand how regular people felt. Her words were very powerful, and millions of people in the UK watched her. This interview caused big changes in the royal family. The Queen acted very quickly. She talked to important leaders and then sent letters to Diana and Charles telling them they needed to get a divorce. People who write about the royals say Diana was very upset by this. She wanted more time to think and she didn't want to be totally cut off from royal life. But the divorce went forward. They had to talk about money and houses and who would look after the boys. Finally, in August 1996, the divorce was done. With the divorce, Diana's status changed. She was still called the Princess of Wales, but she wasn't Her Royal Highness anymore. This meant she would have to bow to her ex-husband and her sons. To Diana, this felt like a final way of saying she wasn't part of the family anymore. It felt like a door was being slammed shut. Her helper, Paul Burrell, told the story about how William tried to make her feel better by promising to give her title back when he became king. Even if we don't know for sure if it happened, it shows how close they were. After she wasn't a working royal anymore, Diana started a new part of her life. She stopped helping many of her old groups and picked just a few that she really cared about. She helped a hospital for sick kids and a group that helped people with a disease called leprosy. She worked even harder to help people even though she wasn't working for the Queen. Even though she was out of the royal group, her 2 sons were still the center of her world. She planned her whole life around when they were home from school. She went to meetings with their teachers and was always there for them. People who knew her said she was a great mom who always answered the phone when her kids called. But this was also a time when she felt very alone. She didn't have the royal guards to keep her safe anymore, and she felt like people were always watching her. In some secret letters that were found later, Diana wrote that she was scared. She wrote a very scary letter in 1995 saying she thought someone might try to cause an accident in her car. Some people think the letter is real and some don't, but it shows that she felt very unsafe and worried. Even when she felt scared, Diana never stopped trying to help the world. In 1997, she went to a country called Angola with the Red Cross. She wanted to tell the world that landmines were very dangerous and should be stopped. There are famous pictures of her walking through a field where the bombs had just been cleared out. She was wearing a big vest and a mask to stay safe. These pictures showed how brave she was. She used her fame to make people look at big problems that needed to be fixed. During her last months, she was very focused on getting William and Harry ready for the future. She didn't want them to think being a leader was about having power. She wanted them to think it was about helping others. She told William to use his voice to help people who didn't have one. Sadly, that future was cut short. On August 31, 1997, Diana died in a terrible car crash in Paris. The whole world was in shock. Everyone was very, very sad. William was only 15 and Harry was only 12. They had to walk behind their mother's coffin while thousands of people watched. Their faces showed how much they were hurting. But even though she was gone, Diana's influence was still there. You can see it in how William and Harry act today. They still care about the things she cared about. They still try to be kind and help others. Diana's love was so strong that it stayed with them even after she was gone. What do you think about the secret letters from Princess Diana? Do you think they show us a side of her we didn't know? Tell us what you think in the comments. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe so you can see more stories about the royal family. Diana's legacy is not just about being a princess in a palace. It is about being a mother who loved her children with everything she had. She wanted them to be more than just symbols of a country. She wanted them to be good men who understood the world. She taught them that even if you have a lot of money and a big title, you are still a human being who should be kind to others. This is a lesson that William and Harry have carried with them throughout their lives. When we look at the work they do today, we can see Diana's heart in them. They visit hospitals, they help people who are sad or struggling, and they talk about things that are important. This is the real Diana effect. It wasn't just about fashion or fame. It was about changing the world through kindness. The letters found in 2004 were like a gift from the past. They reminded everyone of the warmth and the humor that Diana had. They showed that behind the bright lights of the cameras, there was a woman who just wanted to hear her children laugh. She wanted to see them grow up and be happy. Even though she wasn't there to see it happen, her words stayed on the paper to remind us all of her love. It is amazing how a few words written by hand can tell such a big story. It makes us think about our own families and how much our parents love us. Diana was a princess to the world, but to William and Harry, she was just Mommy. And that was the title she loved the most. As the years go by, more people will probably find more letters or stories about Diana. Each one helps us understand her a little bit better. She was a complicated person who lived a very famous life, but her heart was simple when it came to her kids. She wanted to protect them, and she wanted to give them a real life. She succeeded in many ways, even if her life was too short. The fact that we are still talking about her today shows how much of an impact she made. She changed the royal family forever. She made it more human and more caring. And she did it all because she loved her boys. So when you think of Princess Diana, don't just think of the crown or the big wedding. Think of the mom who took her kids to get burgers. Think of the mom who signed a thank you note with her son's scribbles at the bottom. Think of the woman who walked through a minefield to help others. That is the real Diana. She was a mother, a helper, and a friend to the people. Her story is one that we will never forget because it is a story about love, and love is the most powerful thing there is. Thank you for joining us today as we looked at this beautiful and sad story. We hope it made you think about the people you love in your own life. We are so glad you stayed to listen to the whole story. Princess Diana's life was like a bright light that shone on the world, and even though the light went out, the warmth is still here. Her letters are like tiny sparks that keep her memory alive. William and Harry are now grown men with their own lives, but they will always be her boys. Every time they smile or help someone, they are showing the world the best part of their mother. It is a beautiful legacy that will continue for many, many years. Please let us know in the comments if you have a favorite story about Princess Diana. We love hearing from you. And remember to be kind to everyone you meet, just like Diana would have been. See you in the next video.